let's talk about
Exactly.
the Liberal Party and its future, if it has one. I mean, it looks like it has no future at all. This same AFR poll that I referenced at the start of the interview paints a very grim picture for the Liberals and Nationals, with fewer than 1 in 5 voters backing them. Support for Liberals and Nationals combined is less than 20%. A lot of talk about how bad the polling is for Susan Ley, whose personal ratings have, of course, hit a record low. And questions, Adam, around how long does Susan Ley have left? That's one part of it. But then again, is a new leader, would that be enough to save the Liberal Party?
Well, I don't think a new leader would be enough. I think they need new policies, new convictions, or at least consistent ones across the party. Right now, the Liberal Party really is 2 or 3 parties that just call themselves Liberals. They have to sort that out, and I believe there'll be defections to One Nation. There might be defections to the Nats. There may be defections in the other direction. Who knows? I think there's a lot of movement that we're going to see on the right side of politics for the next 4, 6, 8 weeks. I do expect by the end of that 2 months that Susan Ley won't be the leader of this new Liberal Party. She may be, but I mean, I think what she's presided over has not been fantastic in Liberal Party history, and it's kind of hard to see that her leadership is not terminal. But let's just wait and see. I mean, the numbers at the moment are apparently with Angus Taylor, a former minister, former energy minister. He's a very smart guy, very articulate. But it wouldn't surprise me if there are some other people put their hands up in any spill. I know Andrew Hastie's ruled himself out, but there will be others, of course. I mean, if you go into politics, generally you want to be the leader. So that's most people's aim.
Yeah, we're seeing
so let's just wait and see. But they need to sort out their principles. That's the most important thing. The reason for the One Nation surge, I think, is because people know what they think on the core issues of energy, net zero, and on housing and immigration. They know. Do you know what the Liberals stand for on those? I don't really know. There's a lot of conflicting messages.
Great question. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you know exactly where they stand on all issues. They don't flip-flop. The Libs have been flip-flopping on issues, and I think it's part of the reason they're in such a mess right now, really. Now, the Reserve Bank is expected to lift interest rates for the first time in 2 years today due to this rise in inflation. Adam, can you talk to us about why this is happening here in Australia? I mean, you've written about the notes money supply and that more than a quarter of the Australian dollars in existence today were created in the past 5 years. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, that is extraordinary. I like saying that over and over again because I think it shocks people. But yes, the RBA is almost certainly going to lift rates. The next meeting, which is today, as you say, probably 0.25 basis points to 3.85, I believe. This has all been very embarrassing for them. They cut rates 3 times last year on the belief that inflation was going to fall. When they cut rates, inflation was already too high. And what happened was it just kept increasing. So it now looks like the first rate cut in particular, the one before last year's federal election, was very politicised. That was certainly not necessary and in hindsight was wrong. Of course, the Labor Party would have loved it at the time. And the subsequent 2 were wrong as well. I mean, I was arguing the whole last year, don't cut them, because the inflation rate was still in the high 2s. And there was no sign it was going down. And of course, now you have this latest reading, 3.8% for last year. That's well above the target. It's very embarrassing. And as for the cause, well, it's a mix of government spending. They are all running budget deficits. And when governments run budget deficits, they do actually create new money. It gets pumped into the economy. And the banking system too, because they're lending like crazy for houses. Whenever they issue a loan, they create money out of thin air. And of course, that money is then pushed into the housing market. And so, of course, house prices go up. So you also get inflation too. I mean, it goes from house prices, then it goes to other assets, and it flows through the economy. I mean, really, the money supply is growing at 7% a year, right? The number of Australian dollars sloshing around out there in bank accounts, that's very fast, really. Nothing else grows at 7%, not population, nothing real. And so it's no surprise to any economist that knows his stuff that you're going to get a pretty high rate of inflation, especially in housing, where most of the money ends up, when the money supply grows that much.
And we're all feeling it. And Australians, it's just
exactly.
not helping us at all. Let's talk about what's happening in the United States. Donald Trump, he's facing massive issues at home. And of course, he's also weighing up whether or not to strike Iran or not. I want to get your thoughts on both issues. Let's start with what's happening domestically. Trump announced over the weekend that the government will not be assisting blue cities with ongoing anti-ICE riots unless help is requested, adding that he's instructed ICE agents to be very forceful in the protection of federal property. Adam, you covered the BLM riots and you've covered US politics for some time now. looking at what's happening in America right now, there are plenty of reports that the protests that we've been seeing in recent weeks are not exactly organic. What's your read on where this is at the moment and what we're likely to see unfold?
Well, I think the first point to make is the US is completely riddled with people who should not be there legally. That's true. 5 million, 10 million, no one really knows the number because it's hard to track. And Donald Trump was elected on a platform to remove a very large swathe of those people, a small proportion of whom are actually criminals. They do cause damage. We know that. And they have very vigorously tried to enforce that policy. And it's hard. People hide. It's hard to know who's who. And you've seen in Minnesota the riots, the 2 accidental shootings, and that was a very bad look, I think. I mean, you can argue about whose fault it was, but at the end of the day, 2 people were shot by federal agents. It's not a good look for the federal government. And I think after the second one happened, I think a lot of supporters, even me, were a bit like, oh God, maybe we have to slow down a bit here. Because it just creates so much anger. And, you know, one famous fund manager said, I think it was Ray Dalio, said the US was on the brink of civil war. I mean, I think that's excessive, but that's the sort of thing some very intelligent people are thinking. So he has pulled back. I think he's announced there'll be no more ICE agents going to Minnesota, or they'd only go if the local state asks them to go. So I think that's an admission that the aggression levels or the implementation was not right. But the principle is right, I think. I mean, you know, if you have a law, well, it should be enforced. If it's not enforced, we'll just change the law and get rid of it. And that's where I think that is going to head. So Trump has stepped back on that one.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Look, we do need to see a de-escalation, and so we can't have any more people being shot because it's absolutely tragic. But he's got a lot on his plate, Donald Trump. He's, of course, weighing up striking Iran. There are reports today that the US and Iran may be holding diplomatic talks in Istanbul on Friday, but of course there are warships in the Middle East. How do you think this is going to play out? What's your sense?
Yeah, well, look, this is very risky. I think it's riskier than last year when the US dropped those bombs on that country to stop some of its uranium enrichment. There's, as you say, there's a warship armada there. I think the Arab allies of the US are trying very frantically and very hard to pull the US back from being more aggressive, because they see that Iran has essentially on this been cornered. It's had all those protests, which have been extremely embarrassing, domestic protests where thousands have been killed. So it's a humiliated regime, but when regimes get like that, they are likely to strike back if they're attacked because they're worried that they'll collapse. And I think the threats that the US has made to Iran, they can't really be accepted by Iran. I mean, if I was Iran, if you were Iran, you would not accept them. They're basically saying you can't have a foreign policy, you can't have missiles of a certain length, and of course, you can't have nuclear weapons. You know, maybe on that third one, they will make progress, but I think the others too, in my view, they're probably going to be dropped because no self-respecting sovereign nation is going to allow some other country to tell it who it can and can't give money to, especially, you know, a country of 80 million people that's thousands of years old. I mean, that's how they see it, right? So, but on the other hand, Trump has foolishly, in my view, said that he would save the protesters or at least help them. But I can't see how he can do that without basically invading the country. And Trump has done a lot of interventions, but I think he likes the low-cost ones where you just drop a few bombs or you kidnap someone, you know, and then everything goes back to normal. But a full-scale war with Iran would not be like that.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch him hold off for now. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Senior Research Fellow and Chief Economist at the Institute of Public Affairs, Adam Creighton, thank you so much for joining us, talking about all issues around the world. We really appreciate it.
Indeed.